Ahoy there! Welcome to Adventure Calls, where we shout across the horizon to bring you the latest updates and adventures to Sea of Thieves, and hopefully talk about some lore along the way. This is another special episode in my Pirate's Life analysis series, something I've been planning for quite a while, and I'm joined by my loyal crewman, Derry.
Hey, what's up, guys?
He's a regular on this podcast at this point, and thank you for joining me for another great episode, Derry. There will
Of
be a
course.
card at the top of the screen if you missed the last episode, but basically we're going from part 1 through 5 of A Pirate's Life, which is Disney and Rare's Pirates of the Caribbean crossover for Sea of Thieves. Huge expansion with a lot of lore, a lot of shit to go over, so these episodes are pretty long, and I put a lot of work into it, so thanks for coming around. It's nice to be making videos again. I took a little break for my birthday, but I'm glad to be back in the rhythm of things. And how are you doing, Derry? Before we
I'm
start.
doing, I'm doing okay. Been playing some Monster Hunter a lot recently, but I'm back. Been playing some more Sea of Thieves a little bit too.
Hell yes. It's been a bit dry in the Sea of Thieves world, despite being a fucking ocean. Considering we're experiencing the longest season yet right now. It's been
Yeah,
5 months since season 6 started. And I just want to name my ship at this point, but that's a conversation for another day. Today we're talking about A Sunken Pearl, which is the part 2 of A Pirate's Life. So before we get into that, I feel like I should recap what happened last time, just in case you missed it. Although you should go back and watch that episode. But just in case you
watch
did
it.
miss, yeah, just watch it. But just in case you did miss it, a castaway has arrived on the Sea of Thieves and kind of sends us to the Sea of the Damned looking for a treasure that threatens the pirate's life itself. We explore this forsaken, dreary place and find the treasure is not only a trinket, but a has-been washed-up to actor. JK, it's Jack Sparrow. But basically, Davy Jones is hot on his tail after arriving in the Sea of Thieves, and he kind of realizes, hey, I want to make this place my new locker. So that's kind of where we left off. After Jack Sparrow is sadly lost in the Sea of the Damned, and we have no idea where he is. And he's lost the trinket as well, which just totally sucks. So we talk to the castaway again. Jack is adrift in the Sea of the Damned, and we must find his compass aboard the Black Pearl, his famous ship, before the dark forces threaten to take it away forever. And these dark forces we'll get into later. We head to the presumed wreck of the Black Pearl, and a familiar tune starts to play from Seabound Soul, which is Passion of Souls. I really like this OST. There's not much to say besides I really like that soundtrack.
It was,
Uh,
it's a pretty soundtrack for a pretty area.
as we arrive to this presumed wreck, one thing I want to mention actually, it's kind of southwest of Discovery Ridge, kind of near Mermaid's Hideaway as well. Those are two islands that have a lot of Siren and Merfolk lore all throughout those islands, so I kind of like that they put some thought into where these might be. Just a small thing I wanted to mention.
I was gonna say it's just attention to detail as always. Sea of
Yeah, of
Thieves
course.
really takes pride in all that other stuff.
We see bits and pieces of a shipwreck encrusted in coral at the surface, which kind of tells us, like, okay, I guess we gotta dive down. And as we're diving down, we start to hear some sort of singing, another familiar song from Seabound Soul, actually, which is "Who Shall Not Be Returning." This has a lot of significance, I would say, not only within this tall tale, but kind of just contextually within the game, and I want to get into that at the very end. But we just hear a woman with quite a pretty voice singing a very sorrowful song, a song of sorrow, you could say. And this is just a great sequence. This is an incredible way to set the atmosphere, just like traveling to the Sea of the Damned, where we see kind of a loading screen of sorts that is very prettied up and has a lot of references to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. This is another way to kind of set the atmosphere as we're diving deep to discover this wreck. What do you think about this sequence, Derry?
I think that it's actually nice to see the ocean floor and be able to swim down there. Just because there's a lot of areas in the game where you think you would be able to see it, but you can't. Yeah, a lot of clever loading screens as well. Like I said, swimming down to the deep part of the ocean.
Uh,
The music adding to it all. It just gets you hyped for what you're about to do.
It's a great way to kind of breadcrumb players to places you want to go with different visuals. I think Rare has gotten really good at that, and that's just good fucking game design. Like, there's not much else to say. As we reach the ocean floor, we see a very picturesque kind of scene, a very sorrowful scene of the Black Pearl bound in chains being dragged on the ocean floor, kind of destroyed, really. Like,
It's kind of sad to just see it there.
yeah, as the music kind of sets in, the singing stops and the music is kind of just let to
Resonate with you and just kind of
yeah, I
let
guess
you
resonate with you, and kind of realize like, damn, the Black Pearl, it's fucking that sucks.
destroyed.
It's destroyed. We our first objective is like go aboard the Pearl. Like we gotta find that compass, find Jack, get him out of here so he doesn't end up destroying the Sea of Thieves by accident. And if you've seen those movies, Jack's compass is cursed through some chicanery and retconning that I don't want to talk about, just because they've royally screwed those movie franchises. It points to whatever the person holding it most desires, and we desire to save Jack. That makes enough
Save the
sense to me.
pirate's life.
Save the pirate's life, yeah. So as we kind of grab the compass, we get a nice little cutscene grabbing it off the ocean crawler. It leads us deeper into this Siren Citadel, and the Siren Queen is kind of luring us, calling to us to enter further as we follow this compass. Just more nice set dressing, more great dialogue, and it's definitely leading to something pretty good.
And one thing I want to say too, this is the most colorful part of the map. And from an art design
Indeed.
standpoint, it is such a contrast from a large majority of the game. The only real colorful sea in the game is honestly the Shores of Plenty, right? Where it's the colorful ocean.
I quite like
It's
the
like a
Ancient
part-
Isles, personally.
Yeah, one of those two, but this is the most colorful set piece in the game.
Oh,
And
100%. It's
as
beautiful.
in a literal sense, it's rainbow with all the other colors of coral. Not to mention the lighting is on point. We don't normally see this kind of lighting in Sea of Thieves, with like, well, actually, we do see a lot of deep blues inside caves, but
I know what
accented
you
by
mean.
these colorful coral pieces. Not to mention, this set a foundation for another map type.
As I was going to
Uh,
say, a year later, this may not seem that impressive just because we have the Sunken Kingdom everywhere now, which is another great addition to the map. But when it first came out, wow, this was huge to see not only all this Siren lore, which, trust me, we're going to delve quite deep into, pun intended, but just the setting, the actual, like, finally seeing this like what the mermaid caverns would look like in Sea of Thieves. We've dreamt about it. There's pictures in the art book, which they've delivered even more on, but it's just great to see. And I'm glad that it got expanded even more into the Sunken Kingdom.
yeah,
We hear Mermaids by Hans Zimmer, which is a track from Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. I rewatched the original trilogy to work on this project, but you could not pay me to watch that movie. I hate that movie. So, that is the one with Mermaid's Dairy. Have you ever seen On Stranger Tides? I feel like I should have asked this before we started
I've
recording, but
I've watched the first three Pirates movies, and I watched four in theaters, and then I kind of fell off the series. And I don't
I
remember the third one
totally
very well.
understand.
I don't because I watched when I was really young. I watched four in theaters, and I thought it was dumb.
On
And
Stranger Tides is number 4, and that is the
yeah,
Mermaid Blackbeard movie, Fountain of
with the
Youth
Fountain
Blackbeard
of Youth,
movie.
and then it was dumb, and stupid,
So much shit wrong with that
boring.
movie, but we're not here to discuss
Yeah,
that right now.
we're going to talk about Sea of
We're here
Thieves.
to talk about Sea of Thieves, and I just wanted to mention that track because that's one of the only things I remember from that movie. The way that the mermaids are presented in that movie is very horror-esque. Like they're the way that the music kind of settles in as they're like dragging sailors beneath the waves. Really like that scene from that movie, but that's one of the only things you'll ever hear me compliment about it. As we get into this Siren Citadel, it's very interesting the way that they've laid it out, and from a game design perspective, like I quite like it. Compared to other parts of the map where you can shoot yourself like pretty much anywhere with your cannon, or sword dashing anywhere you want, the Siren structures are very intentionally designed to gate players off with puzzles and different forms of progression because they're vertical. So you always
Yeah.
start at the bottom and you make your way up instead of like, I want to get to the top of Smuggler's Bay, so I'm just gonna shoot myself
Well,
up there.
so one thing that's a really nice detail about this about the Citadel and other mermaid structures in the game is they are definitely designed for mermaids. They are not designed for humans to easily traverse because they're so vertical. They're meant to be fully submerged in water for mermaids to be able to swim freely up and down. But as a land lover and land dweller like us, we have to climb and find a clever way to get up.
Indeed. I love the actual art design perspective of these. They are coral encrusted structures with kind of held together by shipwreck pieces of lost sailors. They're absolutely beautiful. Like we've already commented on the art design, but I can never shut up about it. Like it's just gorgeous.
Not to mention the unique puzzles that they gave us a new puzzle type in this
Indeed,
entirely,
yeah.
the singing water puzzle, and that we see in other mermaid shrines, I believe. Right? They
Yeah.
reuse this for other. Yeah, they reuse this later on in the game. It's not a very hard puzzle, but it is new. New
Indeed.
content is new content.
There's no margin for error, but they are unique. Like there's no way to fail, but they set themselves apart from the other puzzles. Like it's just a pattern, like follow the pattern puzzle, which there's a lot of those in Sea of Thieves. But the set dressing is different. Like it is a different activity at the end of the day, so I appreciate them nonetheless. And they're
Gameplay
based
variety.
on music, so it's just good variety overall.
Yeah, and not to mention a lot of the puzzles too also involve finding the mermaid statue too, and
Indeed.
where to hit it. So there's more to it sometimes, but
We
yeah.
get a few more scuffles with ocean crawlers. We kind of commented on these enemies last time, so there's not much to say, but they are very involved in the lore at least. And there's some things I want to comment on later as for this tall tale. We make our way to the top of the first citadel, and we kind of get bamboozled. The Siren Queen reveals her plan and monologues to us like, "Hey, you guys are trapped. I'm gonna feed you to my babies, and you guys are stupid, stinky fucking pirates."
Stupid, stinky land lovers. Land lovers.
Indeed. And then we hear a very loud, booming sound, and we hear some tentacles pass our view. The fucking Kraken! The Kraken has a
Yeah,
body, and see if they.
the first time seeing it in game,
And it got
and without
spoiled by the gameplay trailer for Pirate's Life, so I couldn't help myself when this update was coming out. I watched that gameplay trailer, and it ends with the Kraken fight, so I already knew this was going to be a part of the update, but
but
goddamn.
it's
Still
still
really
a huge
impressive.
reveal.
Still a huge reveal. I never thought we would see the Kraken's body in game, and while I still wish it was part of the actual world event in some capacity, or like a rare world event, um,
Or at least
having
if you
this,
like swim
having
in
the
the inky water, you see it.
yeah,
But
having the Kraken in this tall tale is awesome. They used the design from the art book. I had no doubt that they would, but like,
yeah,
it's accurate to all the skulls that we see everywhere in
yeah,
game, which is
yeah,
really
it's it
nice.
because you could only guess what it looked like based on the skulls, but now we can actually see it, and it's nice and it's cool.
In the art
Because
book that came out, like as the game was releasing, there was a painting of how the Kraken actually looks in this tall tale, and I just wasn't sure if they would go with that design just because it was so old. But I'm so glad that they did. Like I love that design. It's really
yeah,
unique.
because well, it's probably just because they couldn't think of anything better, really.
I suppose, but I don't want. I want to give them credit where it's due. I mean, it is pretty
Yeah,
impressive looking, I would say.
it's awesome. It's probably one of the better like Kraken monsters I've seen in a lot of recent stuff. It's a unique take on the Kraken, honestly,
I
because
agree.
most of the time people just do like a giant squid or just a tentacle monster without,
And
pretty much that.
I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure most cephalopods are complete, or they don't have any skeleton, which makes this Kraken unique because it has a skull, but every other part of
Yeah,
it is still cartilage.
because most at least squids, all they have is a beak. That's the
Yeah, yeah,
only
yeah.
form of skeleton that they have. It's mostly cartilage. So the Kraken technically isn't a cephalopod then.
Quite interesting. The Siren Queen calls the Kraken her daughter. The Sirens worship sea creatures like the Kraken and the Megalodon, and Davy Jones, who controls the Kraken within the Pirates of the Caribbean universe, can do the same thing in Sea of Thieves. Like, okay, I can believe that. I guess this technically makes the Sirens a part of the Dark Brethren, at least the Siren Queen within this storyline. I don't want to say that they're a part of the Dark Brethren overall because there's a lot of stuff going on with them right now, but like as for a part
I
of this
would
story, now that the Siren Queen is dead, like I think that's kind of null and void, but
I would say it would be more of like an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of deal. I
I
don't think that
suppose,
they were
yeah.
truly aligned because I think the mermaids and sirens were their own faction to begin with. I don't think they really aligned with anybody.
I mean, yeah, they do
But,
hate humans like no matter what, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense
yeah.
to me. The set piece here is pretty nice. We get a new tool in the form of these tridents, which is a new, interesting PvE weapon. It's great for fort content, but they're bad for PvP. They're way too slow. And compared to other weapons like the Ashen Wind Skull, like it's no contest. These are
You also
the best.
can't sell these.
You cannot sell these, so they're purely a tool. I like stuff like this, like rowboat storage crates, tridents.
Yeah.
More stuff like this in the open world is great.
They make the Fort of Fortune and Fort of the Damned a lot more bearable.
Yeah,
if you
I
have
hate
them.
that content without a trident. Like, I pretty much refuse to do that stuff without a trident. We get new enemies in the form of the actual sirens. We didn't get a chance to mention these last time because there were no sirens in that tall tale, but here they're really put on the forefront. I mean, this is their like main kind of hideaway where they've been exiled. This is my favorite enemy in the game. They're super interesting to fight. They are beautifully animated. Like the technology they put into it, where they can seamlessly swim around and it doesn't look like they're on a track. I guess it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And not to mention these guys do show up in the overworld outside of this tall tale, and they're actually pretty rare. You don't see sirens a whole lot, but when you do, it's kind of a tough fight. They used to spawn in absolute hordes of them.
That was the launch of this update. Like it was really bad.
Yeah, yeah, they spawn in hordes, but now whenever you see them, it's a lot more manageable. There's one thing I would like to mention though before we continue, because I feel like this is a pretty important thing. Because on launch, this tall tale was glitched in multiple ways.
Yes, and we will comment on that more later. But yeah,
Probably at the
this
end.
was the most glitchy tall tale, considering this was the. I want to say, aside from Dark Brethren, this was like the main one that people were going to. It was the second one, so like launch week, everyone was trying to do these 5 tall tales, and the first 2 were very much like people are trying to jump in. You know that it's the first 2, of course. Like they're gonna finish a pirate's life and they're gonna go straight to Sunken Pearl, and it's one location on the map, so everyone is going here on the same day, doing the same puzzles, doing the same encounters, and the devs just really didn't have the foresight to kind of realize like this is going to be the biggest update for our game. Everyone's going to be doing this content, and we should make it so the encounters reset when players do them.
Yeah, which is something that didn't happen. Because the first time we went to do this tall tale, someone had already completed it, and we couldn't figure out any of the puzzles.
Yeah, the puzzles were already done for us, so we tried to complete them, and nothing would happen. So we were just like,
And the
okay,
Kraken fight was bugged too at the end
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Because what happened with the Kraken fight is that there were no cannonballs; they were not respawning.
We had to kill it with our guns and swords.
It was awful. It took
It
us like
was
2 hours to do it.
And I'm sad to say, like, that really kind of burnt us out on these tall tales really fast. It was the second one, so like when we realized we had 3 left, we were like, oh god, how many more of these are gonna be bugged? And of course, we're huge fans of this game and that series, but like when the content is that buggy, it can really quickly kind of make you lose morale. Luckily, we
I'm
didn't really have bugs later on. I would say, like, Dark Brethren was just a little bit bugged, but it really could have been a lot worse.
Upon a second playthrough, this tall tale was a lot better than my first impression of it originally.
Indeed. Indeed.
But anyway, not to diverge too far from the conversation, but I do feel like that is an important thing to bring up a part of this tall tale on release.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention that I kind of teased earlier is about the ocean crawlers. We get a reveal that the mermaid statues, which came all the way from year 1 as just a shitty Vildrat adventure to get players playing, were actually cocoons for the ocean crawlers. So the sirens would lure sailors deep below the waves and kind of encrust them in these statues and slowly transform them into the ocean crawlers. And they've been building an army, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which affects the sailors in many ways. They start to lose their minds as the curse affects them, and they're loyal to the sirens, and they do their bidding. We've talked about the actual designs of the ocean crawlers, like gameplay wise, but I do want to say I love, like, when you look at Davy Jones' crew from the Pirates movies, they are like sailors who have slowly started transforming into the sea creatures that lay beneath them. And that is very much the same case with these ocean crawlers. Just something I wanted to mention. I really
Yeah.
like their art design.
Yeah, and it's just really nice to see that they do care about the minute details with these lore dumps and explanations for the reasons why things are the way that they are.
Even
And I
from like
really,
years ago.
and I do like their take on sirens, of how they treat them in this, because the typical siren's like, oh, they lure sailors to a rock, then they kill them. They try to seduce them, and then they kill them for getting close and eat them. But in this one, it's like they use sailors to build an army to try and take over the Sea of Thieves, which
Indeed.
is its own Sea of Thieves way of using that kind of mythology and folklore.
I love Rare's take on mythology to build this pirate world. Like, there's not much more. Like, I could go on forever. So to avoid a tangent, I just want to leave it at that. It's great. As we finish the fight with those sirens from earlier, we get access to the main kind of citadel shrine. There's more puzzles with different shipwreck pieces, and we see the Kraken slowly ascending. This is a really cool visual and kind of a great way to tease players, like kind of building a boss fight as you're ascending the spire. This is so cool. I love, there's like many different games that do this kind of stuff, like some of the God of War games is the first thing that comes to mind. Just a really cool way to kind of tease a boss fight throughout a level, is showing that boss ascend as the same time as you. These puzzles with the shipwreck pieces are pretty whatever. They're not much to say. And we arrive at a very special set piece to me. The silver blade, bound in chains on a sort of pulley lift system, completely destroyed and shattered, like it's in shambles. Damn. What a way
Even
to
more
see
than
this
the pearl.
beautiful ship. Not even talking about the Black Pearl, like, what a way to see that beautiful ship, but like, as a Sea of Thieves fan, first and foremost, the first time we see the silver blade in game, it's fucking gone. It's destroyed.
Yeah.
And there is a story behind this that I will reach at the end. We're going to go over the main lore pieces, but wow. Wow, like, okay then. We board the silver blade as the Siren Queen continues to shout shit at us, and we hear a faint crying inside the captain's cabin. More on that later. We ascend the spire by lifting the anchor while firing at ocean crawlers. I love this set piece. Like, this is just so cool, man. Great way to, again, like, build up to that boss fight as we're slowly taking down the grunt enemies. And as we reach the top, the Kraken's tentacles peer through the cracks, takes hold of the silver blade and hoists us up, and kind of peers its head through a hole in the wall, and we just have to start firing at it. First time face to face with the Kraken, where we can actually damage it. I like this set piece, but the fight is actually like pretty unintuitive as far as big enemy boss fights go. When it comes to Sea of Thieves boss fights, they've never been crazy. There's not a health bar, there's not like a way to tell that they're taking more damage. I guess we can kind of point to Ashen Lords and be like they have different phases, but that's it.
The one main thing I wish that like bosses do nowadays, or at least like a mill that they could take for fighting big monsters, and to see damage over time if there is no health bar, take a page in the Monster Hunter series.
I was going to
Because
say that.
because as you wear down these giant beasts, you can physically see parts break, blood come out, or just them getting tired. But in Sea of Thieves, you just kind of wail on the Kraken and then it goes away.
Yeah, it really enforces the kind of like bullet sponge idea. Reminds me very much of Destiny enemies when it should be more like Elden Ring or like Monster Hunter, which is a good example. Where the enemies kind of have clear phases, they kind of more react to your actions instead of just whacking my fucking stick at something until the game tells me it's dead.
Yeah, and you could physically see, if there is no health bar, you can physically see the damage it has taken.
What makes combat in video games engaging is the reactiveness to it, actually seeing that my actions as a player are being engaged by the game, being acknowledged by the game. when I whack enemies in Sea of Thieves, they just turn from side to side and occasionally go, ooh, ooh, ouch, ooh.
And then they explode.
Yeah, or they explode. And there are good enemies. Like I was complimenting the sirens earlier. Those are the best enemies in this game, purely from like a design perspective, because they're actually kind of hard compared to like most of the enemies, which are just like, like just a wet fart.
I more so feel that the more health the more health the enemy has, the worse it is in Sea of Thieves because it's
The
just
Gold
longer
Hoarder,
fight.
case in point.
Ugh, Gold Hoarder.
Great character, love Wrathbone, hate that fight. Shores of Gold, the ending is only good because of the cutscene after that egregious fight with that
Yeah.
gold-eating maniac.
But we
Gold
digress.
eating? That was
Yeah,
wrong.
gold eating. Yeah, but we digress. It's still a cool fight because we still get to beat the shit out of the
Yeah,
crap.
I don't want to shit on the game too much. Like I'm a huge fan. I don't need to go over this, but like,
Yeah.
just something to comment on as far as boss fights go. Like we can do much better than this. You can, yeah,
So the unique part of the fight though is if you somehow are failing, like if you somehow mess up this fight, the ship starts to lower, and you have to re-rise it up again
yeah,
as time
and
goes on.
that is, I, I don't have much to say about that. Like it's hard to tell if that's a blessing or a curse.
It's more of a, oh, that's cool, but you're never going to see it because this fight's too easy, and if you fail at it, you probably shouldn't be playing CC.
Or start with something easier. I
Yeah.
don't know what, like a
I don't know
C4
what
maybe.
could be
Yeah.
easier, but yeah.
Before we get to the actual fight, the very end climax with the Siren Queen, I want to go over their actual story. And there's a lot to go over here, so I'm just going to go start to finish, kind of hit the notes as we go along the story. So a mermaid and a warrior of the ancients fell in love, and they began looking for ways to come together because the sea had parted their love pretty much. Like one was bound at sea forever, and one was a revered warrior of the ancients, so they couldn't really come together. But since both races kind of knew magic, they began working towards some conclusion. This was viewed as unnatural to the ancients and the merfolk, and they thought it would upset the balance of the Sea of Thieves as they knew it. This is kind of a common story theme that I think will continue to be played up as the story progresses nowadays. But I like this. An assassination attempt was planned by some of the ancients, and a high priest shot a poison arrow dart against the warrior of the ancients, but failed. So the warrior killed him by throwing him off a cliff. And the Sea Queen used her power of mermaid gems to turn the warrior into a mermaid. They knew the danger that this ritual would possess, but they did it anyway because they were in love and they thought that their love would prevail. And, you know, the ritual worked. And the warrior was turned into the now Sea King. But the ancients and the merfolk were right. By doing this ritual, it unleashed the Whispering Plague, which was a curse upon the merfolk. It robbed the merfolk of their song, which, if you know anything about merfolk and Sea of Thieves, it kind of binds their race together. They sing about their culture and their history. It is what makes them who they are. So by robbing them of their song, it completely ravaged their
Civilization.
their entire civilization, pretty much. The king and queen and all of the sirens were banished, and they formed their own kingdom. And by losing their song, they had lost all their memories of their culture, their art, their history, all that. So the king, wishing to make peace with the ancients, not understanding why they were banished, broke the banishment, and he traveled to the surface to kind of make amends. But instead, he was chained, killed, and bound to a chest for all eternity, because the ancients thought, hey, maybe this will end the curse as we know it, and we can restore balance. It did not. It honestly just made things worse.
All it did is just create a faction to be really mad at you.
Very mad. This chest, something that I think might need some explanation. The curses in Sea of Thieves form from emotions, or the world of Sea of Thieves. You know, people in this world are very larger than life. So when they feel something, it can just rub off and stick there. And that is how curses start to form. This is how it's been described, at least. The Sea King, filled with so much just overwhelming depression and sadness, this chest turned into the chest of everlasting sorrow, where he is weeping for all eternity for his lost culture and people. Damn, that's upsetting.
It's the only chest of sorrow that doesn't stop crying.
Yeah. This whole event launched a war between the Sea Queen, the Sirens, the Mer, and the Ancients. Wow. If you play Legend of the Sunken Kingdom, which is a voyage offered by Lorena, quite a long voyage, kind of Tall Tale-esque, you learn more about that history, and we find another great warrior who rose to power and was strong enough to send the Sirens to an eternal slumber. But that slumber was not so eternal. Just one thing I want to say before I finish this story. The reason this episode took so long is because this piece of history is so complicated. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces that need explanation, and it just took me a while to kind of figure out how to describe all this.
Might as well be its own video with how much crap
Right?
is a part of it.
The Silver Blade, which we mentioned earlier appears in this tall tale, is a pretty big piece of Sea of Thieves history. Formerly captained by Flameheart Jr., the servant of the flame, the Silver Blade had sunk in the shroud many years ago and was dredged up back to the surface by the merfolk just because that's what they do. That's how they bring players back their ships. So maybe they just saw it on the ocean floor and they were like, oh, okay.
Well, there's no owner to this, so it's ours now.
Yeah, right? A random crew happens upon the Silver Blade, now just floating at the surface, completely empty, captainless. So the crew takes it. The captain of that crew was named Dimitri, just a small piece of info. And they start sailing it as would be their own ship. The Chest of Everlasting Sorrow we mentioned earlier was happened upon by the now new crew of the Silver Blade in one of the shrines along a pair of old bones. Pretty inconspicuous, like, okay, let's just take this, see how much money we can make off it. As the new crew of the Silver Blade leaves, they are pursued by skeleton ships who are not trying to sink the ship, but seem to be trying to stop it. But it was not the skeleton ships that sunk the Silver Blade once more, it was the Sirens. After hearing the wails and the crying from this cursed chest, it awoke them from their slumber, their 1,000-year slumber. So they rise to the surface and start clawing at the ship and bring it to the ocean depths, which is where our story kind of ends. The Sirens, thinking the Sea King has returned to lift the curse, drag the ship below, and the Sea Queen only sees bones and a chest crying for all eternity. And that's where our story ends.
Pretty sad story, all in all.
It's very complicated, but it is a great piece of lore. And learning this last year through A Pirate's Life and the Sunken Kingdom update was so cool. One of the biggest lore drops we've ever gotten for this game. And seriously really interesting. Like, you can tell they kind of teased this stuff. Not intentionally, I do definitely think they came up with this stuff as they went along, but they built on the foundation of that merfolk story very well, and I think it paid off very well too.
Well, and like I said, it's nice that all this information is there, but it's not in your face. You have to go look for it. You're not forced into complicated stories.
Yeah, something I really like about Sea of Thieves is the fact that there are very few tutorials, and a lot of the game is actually about exploration. Like, finding stuff is really...
You're not forced to do anything.
Well, of course, like, it's about player freedom, but, like, finding... Like, I think a big appeal of the game is learning mysteries and, like, exploring the world for the first time. Like, doing your first skeleton fort, or, like, imagine doing Seabound Soul for the first time and seeing Flameheart get awakened. That stuff is awesome. Just something I wanted to say. We kind of progress and fight the Sea Queen in her domain, just off away from the now new remains of the Sea King. Pretty cool room, actually. that with the throne where he's sitting at the throne. This battle with the Sea Queen is alright. It's like 3 waves where you get some damage on her, she calls in some normal sirens, you get some damage on her, she calls in some normal
Pretty
sirens.
much like the normal Sunken Kingdom shrine.
Yeah, it's not like
But
for its time and for lore significance, like yes, this is a good fight.
it was the first of its kind.
It was the
So,
first of its kind, but by today's standards, like it's just a normal siren fight. It's nothing crazy. Again, not like a very interesting boss fight, but you know, it's good. After defeating her, as we're kind of reaching the exit, we see 3 conspicuously placed mermaid statues, and we're pirates. You know, we've been around the ringer before. We destroy them, and out comes the crew of the Black Pearl, who were being transformed into ocean crawlers. Good thing we arrived on time, right?
Yeah.
It's Gibbs, Scrum, and Anna Maria. I like that. Just something I want to comment on. I like that Rare chose these 3 characters. They represent different, not only different character dynamics, but different like pieces of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So Anna Maria is only in the first movie. The actor didn't like how she was being treated on set, so she left. Scrum is only in the 4th movie. He is not that interesting, but I like that we get some representation for that shit-ass movie. And Gibbs is there. He's in every movie. He rocks. I love Gibbs.
Gibbs is awesome.
Absolute great character.
It's funny too with their models; they don't get the Jack Sparrow treatment. They just look like Sea of Thieves pirates. It's
yeah,
funny.
when you're selling Jack Sparrow, you really have to get that face right, because like yeah, you can say Jack Sparrow's in the game, but if you are gonna make a trailer for your game at E3, you really want him to look and sound like Jack Sparrow, and they nailed it. I was convinced.
Yeah. With his other crewmates, they just look like normal Sea of Thieves pirates, which is fine. It's just a funny little
Which is
detail.
weird because Gibbs is actually voiced by the Gibbs actor. Which I'm like, okay, why didn't they give him his face? But whatever, they're like Sea of Thieves-ified. Which is fine by me. Like,
Yeah, they look pretty close to what they would be in the Sea of Thieves.
they're kind of ugly. In the Sea of Thieves art style. I'm gonna go out and say, like, their models are kind of ugly, but whatever.
Well, so are Sea of Thieves pirates in general.
I suppose you're right. You calling my pirate ugly, you bitch?
I mean, take away the beard, maybe.
You're not nice. Now that the crew is freed, we have a team ready to help and find Jack. And thus our tall tale kind of ends. We hand him the compass, and they find their way out. So let's get to the conclusion, the ranking, final verdict. What do you think about this tall tale dairy, and where does it rank among the other 4?
Generally speaking, if you had asked me this question like a year or 2 ago,
A
I'd
year
say
or
this
2?
tall
This,
year ago, however long this tall tale is ago. I said 2 just to be generous. I would probably place it as my least favorite tall tale because of my first impressions of it. But now, after replaying it recently for this series of videos, it's probably up there, probably 3rd place. A good middle ground tall tale.
Not bad. I
Yeah,
really
it's-
gotta put
it's
some
more-
thought into this
But
because
for me,
there's a
I was
lot
gonna-
here.
I was going to finish my thoughts on it. For me, it was more so that after replaying it, I give this tall tale a lot of credit for setting foundations for the Sunken Mermaid stuff and all those puzzles.
Indeed.
It was the first of its kind. It had a very interesting set piece, and looking at it from an artistic standpoint, it is one of the more beautiful tall tales when it comes to the set pieces and stuff. Music, general sound design, the lighting, pretty much everything. The only thing that kind of bumps it down for me is the lackluster fights.
I can see that.
Yeah.
As for me, like, as a Sea of Thieves head, even before this update, like, wow. I think this specific tall tale, I would honestly say this is like the biggest lore drop the game has ever gotten. Not even mentioning Season 4, like, getting any amount of mermaid content, like, that's stuff people have wanted since before the game came out. And now we get a new enemy. Like, if we're judging these tall tales by... If we're judging this update by, like, order of things introduced, and by that I mean, like, this is the first time the sirens show up canonically, I guess. Wow. Kraken fight, We get great music and set pieces, as you said, with the entire art design of the Citadel. The Black Pearl, like, first showing up. Tridents. Did I say the Kraken fight already? Like, I feel like I gotta
Yeah.
keep hammering that home. The Sea Queen, the Sea King. Like, those are
Yeah,
things that I've
those-
been thinking about for years, and there's, like, drawings of them on Discovery Ridge that have been there since the beta. Like, damn,
Yeah.
there's a lot
Even
here.
though I personally find the fights lackluster, that doesn't mean that they're any less significant lore wise that we're getting them and seeing them.
I think
That
as far as a
I will
pirate's
never
life
know.
goes, I want to say this is my second favorite. I really want to say, I think so. Wow. And as for every tall tale in this game, it's in the top 5. There's a lot to like here. Even despite the buggy launch, I got a great takeaway from this tall tale. I'm really
Yeah.
satisfied with it.
It was a good tall tale. Like I said, upon replay, it's a lot better. And in the comments, you should probably tell us what you think of these tall tales. If you played them.
Good idea, Derry. That's one of the only good ideas you've ever had.
That's a lot.
Comment your thoughts on this tall tale in the comments below. And I want to thank you, Derry, for joining me.
Yeah, of course, of course.
The next episode hopefully won't take as long to produce. I just really had to put some thought into how I was going to script this one. And I'm happy with how it turned out. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the seas.